So, yeah. The Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers rivalry. This was meant to be the Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese rivalry. This was meant to be the rivalry to propel college basketball because it did. In the year of 2021, it did. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The two of these playing at the same time was huge for college basketball. Caitlin Clark, yeah. At the end of the day, it wasn't the craziest thing with Caitlin Clark and Paige as freshmen. Paige was the bigger star. And at the same time, though, people don't understand, Caitlin Clark was a huge star in her own right. Caitlin Clark was one of the bigger stars in the Big Ten. She was the biggest draw in the Big Ten that year. And the most viewed, I'm pretty sure, game, other than like some of the top ones. I'm pretty sure, well, not maybe the most viewed, but when Caitlin Clark played Paige Bueckers, it was one of the most viewed games. Because Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers were two of the greatest freshmen of all time. No doubt about that. They were two of the greatest freshmen of all time. Paige Bueckers, yes, stats-wise, Caitlin Clark was much better. Paige Bueckers played in a better team. Paige Bueckers was more efficient and her team was better. Caitlin Clark was individually probably better. They won co-freshman of the year. Even though Paige somehow won National Player of the Year and Caitlin Clark wasn't top 15. But the reason is Iowa were unranked and people were like, she's doing it against easier competition. But obviously, hindsight being 2020, yeah, probably greatest player, college player ever. But Paige Bueckers is making a mockery of college basketball. Like USF, who they're playing today, are 2-0. They are 2-0. They are not a terrible team. They're not ranked. They're not going to be brilliant. They are up 25 points in the third, and they were up, what? Were they up 20 early in the game? Paige Bueckers, up to this point in the game, is shooting 9 of 10 from the field. She has 22 points on 1 miss. And with Paige, she also is the most efficient scoring guard there has ever been in college basketball. She is one of the highest assist to turnover ratios. Like, she's not nearly the passer that Caitlin Clark is. She's a more careful player than Caitlin Clark. They are not that similar in how they play. But Paige has less flaws. Paige has no flaws. Paige has absolutely no flaws in her game. And look, she is the only young player that I think you are not, like, you don't have a few screws loose if you think is better than Caitlin Clark. Like, Paige, in my opinion, Caitlin Clark is better than Paige Bueckers. No question about it. Would that be the case with no injuries, and is it going to be the case for their career? Probably. But there's no guarantee. Paige Bueckers, is she going to come into the WNBA and take over like Caitlin Clark? No, she's not. Because Paige Bueckers is still going to be an all-star. She's going to be top 15, 20 players from the get-go. And in 5-6 years' time could be an unbelievable player. The only thing when it comes to Paige, with her versus Caitlin, is that Paige Bueckers, not that she's passive, but like, she's cool with shooting the ball 13 times, scoring 19 points. Whereas Caitlin Clark is that, like, relentless, go. I'm going to score every time. I'm going to drop 50. Like, Caitlin Clark would be like, I'm going to score 50 and 10. I'm not stopping. I'm going to go and compete. I'm going to run. I'm playing it with a motor that nobody else plays with. Whereas Paige Bueckers, like, Paige has a better handle than Caitlin. Paige is I would say they're similar spot-up shooters. Caitlin Clark is better off the dribble. Caitlin Clark's better from deep. Paige Bueckers is a much better mid-range game. And Caitlin Clark is better driving to the basket. Caitlin Clark's a better passer. Caitlin Clark helps her team play better, and she is a better number one option. Paige is good enough that it's not a formality that Caitlin Clark will be better than her. It is a formality that Caitlin Clark is better. Like, Caitlin Clark is so much better than Angel Reese. Angel Reese will never be better than Caitlin. It is unlikely Angel Reese at any stage of her career will be better than Caitlin Clark is right now. Ryan Howard, I'm talking about other young players. Aaliyah Boston, it is unlikely at any stage. Maybe Aaliyah Boston's smart enough, they're not ruling that out. Ryan Howard will never be as good as Caitlin Clark is right now. I'm not entirely, like, Juju Watkins is an interesting one, but I still think both of these are going to be better than Juju. Paige is so good at basketball. And like that's the only way I can describe Paige Bueckers, is she's just so good. She has no weaknesses in her game. And look, these two played against each other. Caitlin was clearly the better player. Caitlin is clearly a better player. But if there's going to be anyone in these crop of players, it's not going to be Hannah Hidalgo. I like Hannah Hidalgo. I think she's really, really good. I don't think it's going to be Juju, but it could be Juju. I think there's a ceiling where Juju is the best of the three, but I think there is no scenario where Juju Watkins is like... there's no scenario where there's a debate, I think, between Juju Watkins and Caitlin. I have a feeling Juju is either going to go and be the best player in the W, or she's going to be not Ryan Howard, but Ryan Howard-esque, not 6'2" Arike, but she's going to be a high volume shooter, low efficiency, high scorer. I think there's a potential for that. But what Paige is going to be is, I think she is the best possible version of what the old WNBA was. The only issue is it's here. It is a mentality thing. I think mentality-wise, Caitlin Clark is a psycho on the court, whereas Paige Bueckers, all the skills are there, but doesn't have that mentality of Caitlin Clark. And that mentality can be a good or a bad thing. Like, there were times in Kobe Bryant's career where the Mamba mentality was the worst thing for a situation. But the reason why he had the career was because of that mentality. There were times, maybe not in Jordan's career, but there are times in almost any one of these players' careers where that type of psychotic mentality isn't going to work. It's not the best thing. And there's going to be times, I think, in Paige Bueckers' career where people are going to make that argument that Paige is the better of the two. And I think she's the only player that I've seen in the last... somewhat kept an eye on women's college basketball over the years. Ever since, realistically, the Paige and Caitlin Clark first year. And it was Paige Bueckers that got me back into watching it, not Caitlin Clark. Although, 2022, I just remember at the start, and it was 2021, so it would have been, say, back when I was still living with my parents, and I'd be showing, when I used to stream 2K, I used to be because I would always have it, my whole thing with 2K was WNBA players would be fun, and people were like, oh, women's basketball's terrible. I'm like, just look at this one. She's in college watching Caitlin Clark shoot from 30. That was from her freshman year, But, yeah, it is... this is going to be a debate, and I don't really care what people say. It's a debate. If you say that Paige Bueckers was better than Caitlin Clark last year in college, I don't think you were right. I think you're not crazy. And I stand by that. There are certain debates that people can make that are probably wrong, but they're not crazy. I've always said this, where it's what players can you debate or that you can make a legitimate argument are the greatest basketball player of all time without sounding crazy? And for me, it's there are 5 players that you can make a legitimate argument that are crazy, that you're not crazy. Obviously, LeBron and Jordan, a lot of people have them 1 and 2. It is what it is. 99% of people are going to say one of those two. I think you can make an argument for Kareem. I don't agree with it, but you're not crazy. I think you can make an argument for Wilt. You're not crazy if you think that. And I think you can make an argument for Stephen Curry, just because of the impact on the game and just everything with spacing, and if you want to make the arm spacing. And I think Nikola Jokic is going to get into that conversation soon, where it's you're not a psycho if you think he's number one. And I think that's what the debate is going to be. You do not understand the sport of basketball, or you are just intentionally crazy, or you are making it a race argument if you think Angel Reese is better than Caitlin Clark. Paige Bueckers is not better than Caitlin Clark right now. She's not going to be better than Caitlin Clark as a rookie. But to make the argument, but you can make sound arguments that Paige Bueckers will turn out as the better player. And for that reason, I think that, because it's all based on basketball. This is the one argument based on basketball. The Angel Reese Caitlin Clark argument, there is none, because you can't make a basketball argument. The fact is that you've got two of the best players, two players that are going to be two of the best in the world in 3 years' time. And you've now got a situation where they're in the league at the same time. They're going to play similar positions. They're both going to be in interesting situations. And that's going to be the real debate. That's going to be the real Magic and Jordan Or say Magic and LeBron. Not LeBron. Magic and Larry Bird. It's going to be these two. These two are going to be the players that for a couple of years are going to be the Magic and Larry Bird. And then we got Juju Watkins coming along, who could be the Jordan, could just be another player. Hidalgo could be that. Heck, full Wiley could end up being that. Or there's players we don't know. All the players coming through in women's basketball with how good they are, like Silas Swords, a lot of these other players, you just never know with these guys. So yeah, it's going to be a real fun year next year. And look, Paige Bueckers is almost certainly going to walk Rookie of the Year next year. She's going to be an all-star. She's not going to be Caitlin Clark as a rookie. Like, you could argue she's being set up to fail. I think she's being set up to fail in the short term, but I do think in the long term, it's going to, that's where the debate's going to be. That is where the debate is going to be. Because when, for example, if you add Paige Bueckers, if you had like a good team, let's say the Lynx. If you add Paige Bueckers to the Lynx, you can make an argument that the Lynx are better than if you just added Caitlin Clark to them. Obviously, they still win the ring if you add either of them, but you can make that argument. So there are certain teams where Paige Bueckers would suit better. You don't need to build around Paige Bueckers. She will always fit into any system. But the issue is that sometimes you're having to build around a system of a player. Having to build a player system around a player isn't a bad thing if it's a freaking good system and the player is good enough.